Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching us from. This is lesson 4 of our Catholic Bible study. The title of this lesson is The Origins of the Catholic and the Reformation Bibles. Earlier, we told you that all the Bibles in circulation today could be divided into two groups. The first group is the one we call the Catholic Bibles. And the second group is made up of the Bibles we call the Reformation Bibles. And we told you that a simple way to distinguish these two groups of Bibles is by the number of the books they contain. The Catholic Bibles contain 73 books that are distributed throughout the Bible. Among the 73 books, 46 from the Old Testament and 27 from the New Testament. The Reformation Bibles, they contain 66 books, as we told you, 39 from the Old Testament and 27 from the New Testament. And we have to note that in some of the Bibles we would describe as the Reformation Bible, they now have a new addition, which they call it the Deuterocanonical books. But the term Deuterocanonical books appears like a misnomer because it presupposes that there is a proto-canonical books, but there's nothing like that. The process of establishing the canonicity of the books of the Bible for the Catholics started almost immediately the early church began. It continued through a series of refinement and was ended, more or less, was ended in the 16th century with the Council of Trent. The Council of Trent kind of sealed it up so that there would be no more changes in the order of the books of the Bible. So this was what happened. But the Protestants, especially the Reformation, that claim to have a deuterocanonical books, there's no evidence that we know of the bishops gathering to examine the 7 books to certify that they are canonical, to certify their canonicity. We don't find that evidence. So regarding them as deuterocanonical books does not make much of a sense. There's only one canonical process by which or through which the books of the Bible were established as authentic and their authority and their binding authority established. So it is important for us to tell a little story of how all these books originated, because these stories are very necessary for we, the ordinary Catholics, to know where we are coming from or where we have come from, so as not to lose sight of where we're going. We all remember what happened in the Acts of the Apostles, chapters 7 and 8. The martyrdom of St. Stephen, and then the persecution that broke out among the earliest disciples after the resurrection. This caused the disciples to scatter all over the Mediterranean world. Some went to Samaria, some went to Phoenicia, some went to Sicilia. Many went to the big city called Antioch in Syria. It was in this big city that a miracle occurred. The Jews in diaspora, and this word diaspora, which means dispersion, we shall come back to it, bonded with the Gentiles under the new name, the way. They were professing Jesus Christ resurrected as one body. The miracle caused the members to send a message over to Jerusalem, to the apostles, to come over to Antioch and see what is happening, what was happening among them. Then the apostles, as we read from chapter 11 of the Acts of the Apostles, they sent Barnabas, and Barnabas was overwhelmed with what he saw. And then he went back as far as Tarsus to bring along with him Saul, who had become Paul. And then they became the teachers and leaders of this wonderful community, model community. It was from this community that the two apostles, Barnabas and Paul, were sent out to go to the various centers of the diaspora Jews and replicate what was happening in Antioch. And they went over to those places and were preaching and converting and establishing new churches. The Jews who were in these communities were already reading a kind of Old Testament that was different from the one that was read in Jerusalem and around Palestine. This is because at that point in time, there were many Jews scattered all over the Mediterranean world. It all started in the 8th century, 800 years before Jesus was born, when northern Israel was sent to exile to Assyria by the Assyrians. Assyria, the capital of Assyria then was Nineveh. Then 200 years later, around 6th century BC, 600 years before Jesus was born, the southern Israel, made up of Judah and Jerusalem, was captured by Nebuchadnezzar and then sent to Babylon. By that time, the Babylonian Empire had succeeded the Assyrian Empire. This was how Jews scattered all over the world. They were called Jews in dispersion. That was how they had so many communities. They had many children who could no longer speak their local languages of Aramaic and Hebrew. So what happened was that the reign of the Babylonian Empire was brought to an end by Alexander the Great, around 300 years before Jesus was born. The reign of Alexander the Great brought what we call Greek education, Hellenism. Everybody was speaking Greek and learning in Greek. And Alexander the Great established in Egypt the powerful city of Alexandria. It was this city that became the center of learning and commerce. As we know, Alexander the Great did not live long. He was succeeded by Ptolemy Caesar, who transformed Alexandria into a business and academic city. So there were so many Jews who had migrated into this big city. They and their children could no longer speak their native language. So Ptolemy Philadelphus, according to tradition, sent over to Jerusalem and requested. And they gave him 70 experts who arrived in Alexandria. They translated the Old Testament into Greek in 70 days. 70 in Latin is Septuaginta. And that particular number lent its name to the new translation in Greek. It became the Septuagint. This became the popular text the Jews in dispersion who could no longer speak their native language of Aramaic and Hebrew were reading. And included in this Septuagint were 7 books which were noted before, which included Judith, part of Esther, part of Daniel, Wisdom, the 2 books of Maccabees, and a few others. These were integrated into the Septuagint. They were being read. The book became so popular. So when Paul and all those who were preaching to the Jews in dispersion, they were quoting and reading from the Septuagint. But the Septuagint, which was a Greek Old Testament, was not known in the Jerusalem area. They had a different set of books written in Hebrew and perhaps also in Aramaic. But you know what happened in 66 AD? The Romans laid siege to the temple in Jerusalem. In 70 AD, the temple was destroyed. With the temple destroyed, the Sadducees, who were in charge of the temple because they provided the high priest, they lost power. Then the power to integrate the Jewish population scattered all over the place. The few that remained in Jerusalem, the Pharisees and the scribes took over with the Torah and the Old Testament. The little struggle that existed between the Sadducees and the Pharisees vanished because the Sadducees believed only in the 5 books of Moses as canonical, as authoritative. But the Pharisees, unlike the Sadducees, believed in the Torah, in the Ketubim and Nabiim. That is, they believed in the 5 books of Moses. They believed in the books of the prophets, the Nabiim, and then the writings. So they had a larger list of books that they believed that formed the Old Testament. With the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem and the loss of power by the Sadducees, who were the priests, now the whole power of integrating the Jewish population rested on the Pharisees, who organized them in different synagogues to make sure that they were together. Now that they are scattered all over the place, they called a council in the Palestinian city of Jamnia. In the Palestinian city of Jamnia, that is near Job. There, the Jews that were at home gathered to approve the books that were authentic to them, for them. And then they accepted a good number of books, up to 22, as authoritative. So the Jews at home who were around Jerusalem, they had a different set of books written in Hebrew. The books that were being used, the book that was being used in the dispersion, in the diaspora, the Septuagint, was unknown to them. So when Christianity started growing, the books they knew, the early Christianity knew, was the book, the Septuagint, that was popular in the dispersion. All the New Testament writers, they quoted, their quotations came from the Septuagint. not the Hebrew scripture. So it was from there that they developed, the early Christians developed their canonical books from the Septuagint. So this was how the books, the Catholic Bible, evolved from the Septuagint that formed the foundation of the early Christians, congregations, and churches. The New Testament depended on the Septuagint because the New Testament, all the books of the New Testament, they were written in Greek. The book of Matthew, which was said to have been written in Aramaic, is non-existent. The Matthew that we have today was written in Greek after the 70 AD destruction of the Jerusalem temple. So the Bible that we call the Catholic Bible originated from the earliest period of the Christian church. It developed, it built from the Septuagint, which was the Bible of the Jews in diaspora, the Jews in dispersion. But then, in the 16th century, especially from 1517, when Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses and challenged some doctrines of the Catholic Church, he did not stop there. He decided to reject the Septuagint and went back to the Hebrew text of those, the Jews in Jerusalem, around Jerusalem. We call them the Palestinian Jews. The Bible, the collections they made at Jamnia, near Joppa, in the Palestinian city, he decided to build his Bible from there. The Bible, those books of the Bible, they were never quoted in the New Testament. They were alien to the New Testament. But to show his total separation from the history of the Catholic Church, he decided to go back to the collection made by the Jews who were around Jerusalem after its destruction. That's where he got his own Old Testament list. And that is why his books are not complete. They are only 39 of them, because those were the ones he could find from the list of the Hebrew books that were established by the Palestinian Jews who were not in dispersion. So that's how he got his own Bible. Then he didn't know what to do with the New Testament, except some of the tinkering he did. But he left it, all the books of the New Testament, the 27 of them, that had already been approved by the Catholic Church, intact. Then he decided to unite them with the books he got from the Jews that were at home, that did not go into exile. So that's why there is a difference between the Catholic Bible and the Reformation Bible. Catholic Bible that derived, that has its roots in the Septuagint, is the more authentic Bible that represents authentic Christian spirituality. As I said, the Old Testament from Hebrew that Luther and his group chose, that Old Testament was not quoted by the evangelists of the New Testament. No. Matthew, all these people that quoted a lot of the Old Testament, they did not quote from the Hebrew text from among the Palestinian Jews. They based their quotation mainly from the Septuagint. So the authentic Bible listing, or Bible list of books, has to be the Catholic Bible that has 73 books that derives from the Septuagint, that lies at the foundation of the missionary Christianity of the earliest period. So Catholics should feel happy to make sure that they read the Catholic Bible. That's the authentic Bible. The really authentic Bible is the Bible of the Catholic Church that derives from the Septuagint. That gives you more confidence in your faith, that your faith is founded on the true foundation of the true church. Do not be deceived by all these other books. There has to be, the authentic book is the Catholic Bible that is based, whose Old Testament is based on the Septuagint. The authentic Bible that lies at the foundation of the earliest Christianity. Thank you. Always arm yourself with the true Bible, the Catholic Bible. If you do so, you will never go astray. God bless you. Thank you so much.